I might need Joe's assistance. I clicked start recording and I got a pop-up.
Dictionary.
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Okay. We are. Good deal. Thanks. Okay.
Is the recording going?
Yeah, it says stop recording. So I think we're good. Okay. All right. So, Joe had expressed an interest in doing Genjo koan for our service tonight, which I was pretty happy about. Because it's been a while since we've actually spent any time at all with Dogen. And that's kind of a heavy drop into Dogen right there. I think that's either the longest or the second longest chant in our chant book. But really the sort of thing we probably should be circling back to from time to time. It's so rich. And especially tonight, given the topic that we're going to be looking at from Ben's book tonight, this matter about hindrance and no hindrance, which is spoken to in Genjo koan by Dogen. And just the whole issue of enlightenment is like the moon reflected in the water. The moon does not get wet, nor is the water broken. The moon is reflected even at a puddle an inch wide, so there's no hindrance based on the size of the particular item. Doesn't pose a hindrance at all, either great or small. Enlightenment does not divide you. You cannot hinder enlightenment. So even the term hinder, you cannot hinder enlightenment. Just as a drop of water does not hinder the moon in the sky. So I think right there, that's an image, a metaphor. Hold on to that as you go through this chapter from Ben's book, talking about non-obstruction between the universal and the particular, and also between particulars. You cannot hinder enlightenment, just as a drop of water does not hinder the moon in the sky. So just reflect on that as you ponder that puzzling part of this chapter, and see if that helps. I'll just leave it at that. So Genjo koan was definitely the appropriate piece from our chant book to include in this evening's service, I think. And also, it's been a while since I brought in an outside reading to share a segment of. And tonight I wanted to bring in a wonderful book called The Call of the Honey Guide: What Science Tells Us About How to Live Well with the Rest of Life. So it's very much about interdependence, our interdependence with the rest of life, and some guideposts, you might say, as to how we might conduct our lives with an eye towards our interdependencies, failing which, we may find that we follow the path of the cyanobacteria, which were so instrumental towards making our existence possible. I mean, they were the first beings that developed the capacity for photosynthesis, which meant they were the first beings generating oxygen in an oxygen-free atmosphere. There was no oxygen. Cyanobacteria created that. But in doing so, that was toxic to them. So they took themselves out of the picture, just as we seem to be doing with our burning of fossil fuels and many other things. We may very well be taking ourselves out of the picture, kind of like the cyanobacteria. We may follow them in a similar vein in terms of the history of planet Earth. Those fascinating creatures who term themselves Homo sapiens. But the section from this text I wanted to quote from actually comes from a poet by the name of Sharon Olds, O-L-D-S, whom I was not familiar with. And it comes from a book of poems in which the poet contemplates relationships, the body, her parents' bodies, and whether the marriage of her parents, bound by the gold cell of their wedding rings, should ever have been. Inescapably, her own existence and extraordinary poems, which followed upon her existence, depended upon that coming together. Similarly, however we feel about the ways in which humans came together with other species in the past, those weddings of species led to the existence of the vast majority of people on Earth. Now what? And in the next paragraph, he reports on an interview that he conducted with this poet in her apartment. And writes that Olds will guide you into her tiny spaces, into small rooms bursting with great joys, such as love, childbirth, sex, more sex, and into other rooms crowded with terrible sorrows, sickness, betrayal, agony, death. Stanzas themselves, it is often said, are rooms, rooms that lead to other rooms. Eventually, Olds will show you that all the rooms are interconnected, that the door to joy is the door to sorrow, that it has been one big room all along. So the connection to this chapter we're looking at, the universal, the big room, the particulars, and the non-obstruction. That now we can begin to see, because recall that the previous chapter was talking about samsara nirvana. We think samsara is an obstruction to nirvana. This chapter is continuing that analysis, really, although it doesn't directly refer to it. But the fact of no obstruction, we can look at that now with in the rear view mirror at the previous chapter and see that samsara is not an obstruction to nirvana, the way it has typically been seen even by Buddhist practitioners. There is no obstruction. So we're almost up to the text. One more book I brought in, because the key aspect of this chapter are the four Dharma Dhatu. And Dharma Dhatu being a technical Buddhist term, I thought it might be helpful to pull down the Shambhala Dictionary of Buddhism and Zen, which at least every year or so I have occasion to bring in, just to give the official definition of Dharma Dhatu. And it has two definitions in this particular reference book, one for the Theravadan tradition and one for Mahayana. So beginning with the Theravadan, and Dharma Dhatu, first of all, literally translates from the Sanskrit to realm of Dharma. And in the Theravadan, it's pointing to the nature of things in the sense of a rule to which they hold. But in the Mahayana, it develops into the notion of a true nature that permeates and encompasses phenomena. As a space or realm, then, the realm of dharmas is the uncaused and immutable totality in which all phenomena arise, dwell, and pass away. Finally, the idea of a point of departure or center in relation to this realm became, for the symbology of the Vajrayana, extraordinarily effective. Thus, the Shingon school devised a special mandala under the name of Vajradhatu. So, the Fourfold Dharma Realm, which is the title that's given to this chapter, or the Dharma Dhatu, using the Sanskrit, original Sanskrit term. And the verse from the Song of Dharma Nature that this chapter is a commentary on is this sentence: universal and particulars are thus unfathomable, not distinct. So this relationship between the unfathomability, so our rational, distinguishing mind cannot reach it because they're not distinct. And to fathom something is to see it in its distinct nature, how it varies from other entities. And that then allows us to get some type of measure on it by comparing it to others. But to be unfathomable is literally, there's no bottom to it. It's just vast boundlessness beyond the counting of fathoms, which are, I believe, nautical terms. But maybe our diver can talk about the fathoms down that you go on a dive. It probably is a term that gets used too much, but unfathomable simply means boundless, I think. And now Ben talks about this Fourfold Dharma Realm as one of the most influential teachings of the Huayan school, which I guess shouldn't be surprising because we're talking about the relationship between the universal and the particular. So when we hear that, certainly within Soto Zen, we think about works like Sandokai. It's the relationship of harmony and difference, of universal and particular. So that's the whole gist of Sandokai, which is one of the most important texts in Soto Zen from its earliest time. And as Ben points out a little bit later in this chapter, Dongshan's five ranks teaching is really, it looks very similar to this. It's just adding, instead of 4 realms, there are now 5 ways to depict the relationship between the universal and the particular. So it should be no hindrance, I guess I can say, to have these various approaches because of the fact that it's unfathomable. It's boundless. So you can actually come at it from many different perspectives and kind of divide it out, even though in its true nature, it's incapable of that. So these are just skillful means. Don't take them literally. Don't get hung up on them. Just use them as skillful means to try to gain an insight into the true nature of reality that's being depicted here. The interplay, the dance, if you will, between the universal and the particular. And I think it can be very effectively seen as a dance. And of course, Hakuin, many centuries later, would so depict it in the Song of Zazen, which we've studied not that long ago. So this teaching, this Huayan teaching of the Fourfold Dharma Realm, explores the relationships between the universal and the particular. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this chapter, which is so key to the Mahayana traditions. Another text that Ben references a bit further on is the Heart Sutra, the notion of form and emptiness, with form being the particular, emptiness being the universal. And the Heart Sutra is part of the Prajnaparamita literature. Prajnaparamita meaning the perfection of wisdom. So this is the wisdom teachings of Mahayana Buddhism, the relationship between the universal and particular. And that's what the Huayan teachings of interdependence are Prajnaparamita teachings, even though they don't technically fall into that basket of teachings. But it's literally a continuation of it. And therefore, there are many points of great similarity, I think, between the two. And Ben goes on then to say that these 4 Dharma realms can sometimes seem like a ring of ball bearings in constant motion, where distinctions are made and immediately erased. So distinctions play a role here, but they're not to be held on to because they're immediately erased or just dropped off. They fade away. And in that, it becomes apparent to us that they're not the essential thing, these distinctions. And these relationships between the universal and particular provide practice to us, Ben says, for flowing through the friction caused by fixed views. The friction, the source of that is, it's just part and parcel of having a fixed view, because if it's fixed, then everybody has a somewhat different fixed view. And when you try to bring them together, they start to create friction in points of distinctness that will, my fixed view doesn't look like yours in these particular respects. And we see that as a big hindrance because they can't all be correct. So we invest a lot of energy in figuring out which one is the right one, or at least the best one. If we can't determine the right one, that's okay. We'll accept that. But we need to know the best one. We could live with that. But what if there's no best? What if that's also lacking? And the notion of best is creating friction. So this depiction of the four Dharma Dhatu is showing its open flowing nature, which means that there are no fixed points. As soon as you think you have a fixed point, you go to grab it, it's gone. It's the nature of reality. And so I would agree that I think a key element of this is the ability to kind of loosen up our notion of our fixed views so that all of a sudden they're not the cause of obstructions, of hindrances. But we view them as nothing more than skillful means. And we can use them accordingly for as long as they serve a purpose for us in terms of our navigating our way through the realm of particulars. And when that stops being the case, then we can easily set it down and find a new fixed view. But it's not truly a fixed view because we can set it down so easily. Let it go. So to unfix our views doesn't mean we have to change them, but we have to it's like backing off on the screw. It's too tight. Let me turn that back a few turns. And it has more leeway now. If motion is needed, then if you don't back it off, you risk just breaking the screw and the whole thing falls apart. So that's the nature of the reality of fixed views, I think. That you have to back off the screw. Have play built in. And that kind of sets us up for Ben's next comment about the Huayan and its use of language, of words, which I really appreciated this comment he makes. He says, to the Huayan approach, a word is quite useless if it is not flexible and inclusive. If it's fixed, then its usefulness kind of fades away. It fades away because it's not adequate to the nature of reality. Reality doesn't fit it. Flexibility and inclusiveness are key attributes that are needed if you're going to more accurately depict the way things are. And this flexibility and inclusiveness is, of course, the opposite of the way we usually treat words. We want words to really be specific, so we know what's being talked about. So there's that technical language versus, I'll call it poetic language. So technical language for certain tasks is very helpful and skillful. But if that becomes our benchmark for all of reality, which is kind of what happens, that becomes the paradigm that we kind of buy into, that applies to everything. Then, we fall well short of doing justice to the true nature of things, which is why when we look at the big picture, things like ecology, all of a sudden, the scientific method kind of fails us. It can work well as a tool, but to really navigate our path through something like ecology, we need poetic words that can look at things like the interdependence of all things and the one big room and all these little pieces within that big room, and the boundless interconnectedness that we can't possibly completely and thoroughly identify and understand, even in the world of supercomputers. So this brings us then to the stage where we look at each of these four Dharma realms: the universals, the particulars, the non-obstruction between universal and particular, and finally the non-obstruction of particulars. So the first one looks at the universal, which here basically refers to the emptiness of anything that appears to be a thing. So the world of the particulars is the world of our experience. We experience things as separate beings. The universal is pointing to their true nature as being empty. Everything that appears to us to be a thing is empty. And remember, emptiness means no self nature. So it's not distinct. It's actually part of the big room, to go back to Sharon Olds, the poet. It's the big room, but just one aspect of that room. And the universal, furthermore, has two universal qualities, aspects of its being which are true of all universals, and that means not lasting, which means impermanence. One of the key Buddhist teachings about the nature of reality, impermanence. So that's one of the two universal qualities. And the other is not being separate. So we could call that one non-dualistic, not separate. As soon as we separate things, we're taking a fixed view, and we don't have the holistic view. We can't see it in its true nature within the big room. So that's the universal, and the way we can tell. It's pointing to impermanence. There's nothing that's unchanging, and not being separate. Everything is interdependent with everything else. Core Huayan teaching. And then Dharma with the lowercase d, which is referring to the world of particulars. This realm refers to an experiential event, something that we actually have experience of through our senses, and then our perceptions and our consciousness and our mental formations, all of that goes into the makeup of our experience of things. And another term that Ben uses here is a phenomenon. Phenomenon carries within it the sense of appearance. It's the way things appear to us. Their phenomenal existence is grounded in the way they appear to us. So that's opposed to Dharma with the uppercase D, meaning truth or teaching. So that's the kind of the grounding here between the universal and the particular. But the four realms are the universal particulars, the non-obstruction of universal and particulars, and the non-obstruction of particulars and particulars. So this is where we need to now turn our attention to. And one important point that Ben makes here, and if actually I would go so far as to say if you only carried away from this chapter one thing, this would be a good thing to take away with you. Each of these realms is where we are. And to expound on that a little bit to make it even clearer, it's where we are at any and all times. Each of these realms. So in other words, all four of the Dharma Dhatu, the Dharma realms, are always present in everything we experience. It's not that, oh, this is an example of the universal. Now, if we turn our attention over here, they're all present all the time. And Ben, as Ben puts it, no matter how we are seeing things, we are always in all four realms. We may be seeing it in its universal aspect, in its particular aspect. And that's fine. I mean, even in Sandokai, to go back to that, in the light, and light in Sandokai means the particular. In the light, there is darkness, which means the universal. But don't see it as darkness, because then you can't see the particular. But understand with that eye of wisdom that in the light, there is darkness. But don't see it as darkness, because we need to work with the realm of the particular. So see it as light and deal with it accordingly. But know that it includes darkness, to bring Shito into this, the author of Sandokai. And Ben helpfully introduces terms that are often used to represent the universal and the particular in Dharma teachings. Terms like host and guest, where host is universal, guest is particular. Darkness and light, as in Sandokai, where we tend to think of light as being, wisdom. But actually in Sandokai, light, because by shining a light on something, you can show its particular nature. So light is the particular, and darkness. Think about darkness within mystical teachings, even outside of Buddhism. Within those traditions, darkness tends to be this realm of the universal, as Buddhism propounds it. Trunk and branches, again pointing to Sandokai, which uses that terminology. Trunk, of course, is the universal. Branches are the particularities. And absolute and relative, of course, also stand-ins for universal and particular. And a line from Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage, which reminder that that was Ben's first book, was Inside the Grass Hut. So it was to be expected that he would bring this line in. The line that says, although the hut is small, it includes the Dharma realm. He translates it as here. I think in our translation that's in our chant book, it states, although the hut is small, it includes the myriad things, which is the world of particularities. So even though the hut is small, so it's pointing to this obstruction, hindrance. The smallness of the hut is not a hindrance to its inclusiveness. It includes the Dharma realm. So inclusiveness is an aspect of the universal. So the hut's small obviously points to the particular, where you have small and large, but that has nothing to do with the myriad things. In fact, the small hut includes all things. So that's one of those real seemingly paradoxical statements in Zen that's included in this teaching. That the small hut includes the Dharma realm. It's not any different from it. The myriad things, the universe. And then I'd mentioned earlier that Ben gets around to bringing in the Heart Sutra here. He says the non-obstruction of the universal and particulars is often expressed in Mahayana literature in this line from the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Now, all forms, Ben goes on to say, are empty of lasting separate nature. Forms are physical things. In our case, it's our body. And our body doesn't have lasting separate nature. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. So much for separate nature, right? So we know that. And yet, even knowing it, we keep reverting back to treating it as separate. Even though in its essence, it definitely is not. And certainly isn't lasting. Although we can have that notion sometimes as well. Pure delusion. But, as we know, there's people who have chanted and in many instances studied the Heart Sutra. There must be form in order for there to be emptiness. No form, no emptiness. No grass hut, no matter how small it is. No myriad things. No Dharma realm, D, the lowercase d. So they are truly interdependent. They're one and the same. One big room. And here, Ben does a nice job of addressing the nihilistic view that the teachings on emptiness can lead some people to. He says, if you think that seeing that things are empty means they don't matter, then you are caught on the idea that emptiness obstructs things. But it doesn't. We think if things are empty, then it's an obstruction to the thing in its thingness. But there's no obstruction. And furthermore, he goes on to say, if you think that well-being depends on things, of course we all think that, right? What do you need to promote your well-being? You'll have a laundry list of things. If I had this, this, and this, I'd be pretty well. I'd be pretty well. So if you think that well-being depends on things, then you're caught by the idea that things obstruct emptiness. The fourth Dharma realm is one of the distinct innovations of Huayan thought. Not the fact that there's no obstruction between universal and particular. That runs through the Prajnaparamita literature. That's pretty well ingrained in Mahayana. But this non-obstruction of particular and particular, this was a Huayan innovation. And in our time, because of the uprising of fields like ecology, environmental studies, and related themes, like the social sciences, seeing interdependencies there too. So not limited just to earth sciences. Seeing the fourth Dharma realm invites us to fully engage with all the particular things as they operate harmoniously. This merging of difference and unity from Sandokai, that merging is harmonious. It's coming together in harmony. So seeing the particular things as they operate harmoniously in ecosystems or in human communities where there's actual caring for individual members of a society. This is the fourth Dharma realm. So we're not quite going to finish this chapter, but that doesn't surprise me. It was a longer chapter, and another one kind of like the last one that really is a key chapter that deals with some very essential Zen teachings. So I think it'll be good to carry over to the new year, the last part of that chapter, which we'll open up with on January 8th, I think it is, when we'll next be in here on a Thursday, and move on from there. So let me bow out at this point and invite any questions or thoughts anybody would like to share. Joe?
I have two questions about that section that you were ending up on.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, the first Dharma realm is particulars.
Yeah.
And then number 3 is the non-obstruction of particulars, universal and particular.
Yes.
So does that imply, because number 3 says is specifically the non-obstruction of particulars, that number 1 is obstructed? I mean, I doubt that, but why is I think it's obvious that it's unobstructed, but then they have to say later it's unobstructed.
Right.
And I don't get why.
Oh, well,
And my second part to that, and
Yeah.
then I'll shut up, is just the repeating of the word particulars. I don't get why. I got it the first time.
okay. Yeah. Well, maybe not everybody does
The
get
first time because they had to repeat it. So.
Well, let's just give this a close read then. So he's giving us the first two being the particulars and the universal. So nothing challenging there. We know that, right? So we're good there. And then we get to the third Dharma.
Unobstructed?
Well, that's what we're going to get to here. The third Dharma realm is the one referred to in this line of Huizang's text. Universal and particulars are thus unfathomable, not distinct, which is, that's how I began. I said that's the actual line of this text that this chapter is a commentary on. So the non-obstruction of the universal and particulars. And then he's relating this to form is emptiness, emptiness is form. That it's both directions. That which is form is emptiness. So form, the particular, this body, is empty. And there's no obstruction there. And emptiness is this body. So they're co-existent, equivalent. And because of that, they're not, it's like samsara, nirvana. Samsara is nirvana. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. So to see that and these are terms that we would generally see, I think, in many instances as being kind of mutually obstructing. That kind of like form then, and that's the way Western thought has viewed it. The body is kind of a hindrance. Spiritual practitioners viewed the body as a hindrance and denied it as a result. So that played a role in the origins of Buddhism because that was part of Hinduism. So maybe looking at it that way, that there is no obstruction there, none at all.
Number 4.
Yeah, number 4. Let's stick to it.
It's more clear now.
Okay, good. So down to the next paragraph. And the fourth Dharma realm is one of the distinct innovations of Huayan thought, which I had copied over to share with you this evening. The non-obstruction of she and she just being basically, I think it's a Chinese term maybe for particular things, that they're not mutually obstructive. Things do not obstruct things. Seeing this fourth Dharma realm invites us to fully engage with all the particular things as they operate harmoniously, which is, where I had left off. So let's look at that in the sense of suchness, where everything comes together to create this experience with these phenomena. And we were looking at that in terms, I think it was last week even, of Suzuki Roshi's everything is perfect and complete, just as it is. And just as it is pointing to suchness, just this. So in order to have that experience of suchness, it entails, I think you could say, the non-obstruction of particulars. It's kind of automatically implied by this. This came together. So there clearly was no obstruction. Everything fit together harmoniously. Even though in our view of harmonious, it may not look harmonious, but yet, even we have to concede that, it comes together and creates this moment. And then part of suchness going forward, maybe we can change that moment. Maybe we can vote people out of office. There's always that dream. But in terms of this moment, everything's come together harmoniously, kind of by definition, to create this. Even if there's some seeming tensions here and there, that's part of the harmony too. The kind of the big room harmony. We see the tensions because we're taking a narrower view. But if we take that view of boundlessness, now we can at least have an insight into the fact that, well, actually everything's fit together harmoniously to bring us to just this moment. And then if you're Christian, you might have a passage like "Thy will be done" from the Lord's Prayer might come to mind. That's a Christian notion, it seems to me, of this fourth realm, things coming together. Thy will be done. That they're always coming together. So I don't know. That's just some thoughts I have to toss out there on it.
Yeah, thank you. That I don't know what I was doing. I was breaking it up in little pieces in my mind and got the context. But yes, it seems obvious now.
Okay.
And which leads me to the next question. But I'll cool my jets for a while and let somebody else
Okay.
ask the questions.
All right. Do we have anybody else? Appears not.
You brought up impermanence while you were talking.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about the impermanence of things. Yet in Genjo Koan, the verse was, "The wind is permanent," and
Yeah.
and it goes everywhere. So
Yeah. Dharma with a capital D.
okay,
Buddha nature. Buddha nature.
the nature of yes.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit confused about that. I had to imagine that it's sort of like if you get something, if you have a great insight or an awakening about something, once you see something, you can't unsee it. It's sort of permanent. Permanent on our level. But so what in the heck was really meant by that? The wind is permanent. The wind being what?
Yeah. The wind being what? And so the nature of wind as permanent is our Buddha nature. The nature of wind, our nature, the nature of all things. And there's no place it does not reach. So classic Zen understanding. There's no place that Buddha nature does not reach. All beings are Buddha nature. So it's basically this question is saying if everybody is already Buddha nature, then the fanning yourself is a metaphor for practicing. Why do you practice? You're already Buddha nature. Why are you going and sitting zazen? Why are you studying all these books? Take it easy. You're a Buddha. Enjoy yourself.
Maybe I'll take a year off.
Why only a year?
But there's still the impermanence versus permanent. The concept, the overall concept that, it's been banged into our heads.
Right.
That all things are impermanent. Yeah, Buddha nature.
All things.
Buddha nature is a thing. It's just this empty thing that we've created.
But that's not Buddha nature then, see. Buddha nature is beyond that. So we just, in fact, in Dogen, since we're looking at Dogen here, Dogen's fascicle on Buddha nature, Busho. So he wrote an essay on Buddha nature, and he talks about the traits of Buddha nature. And one of those traits is no Buddha nature. And that's why that's so important. It's kind of like the passing through the mu koan. You have to go through mu, no self, no Buddha nature. You don't know Buddha nature until you know no Buddha nature. That'd be a good bumper sticker. At least out in California.
You can substitute the word freedom for Buddha nature. You don't know freedom until you know no freedom.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
That was Californiizing it.
That's good. So, but that's what's being pointed to in that closing section of Genjo Koan. It's that core Dogen question about why do you practice if you already are Buddha nature? All right. Well, let's go ahead and chant out then. I vow to myself and to each of you to commit myself daily to the healing of our world and the welfare of all beings, to live on earth more lightly and less violently in the food, products, and energy I consume, to draw strength and guidance from the living earth, the ancestors, the future generations, and my brothers and sisters of all species, to support others in our work for the world, and to ask for help when I need it, to pursue a daily practice that clarifies my mind, strengthens my heart, and supports me in observing these vows. All right. Well, good night to everybody, and hope to see many of you on Saturday when we'll wrap things up for 2025.